Hello, I'm Marcus Boston. Quick educational video today, and we're going to continue talking about midwives because I recently did a video in which I talked about what happens if the midwife is responsible also for your child's injury at birth and the role that the midwife's employer is going to play in these types of cases. And I got another question which essentially was asking what happens if you just focus on the midwife. And I'm going to explain to you today one really big issue that can come up when you're just looking to focus on the midwife in these types of cases. All right, so let me quickly explain to you how we prove these cases, because understanding what's needed to prove a birth trauma or a birth injury case will help you understand why focusing just on the midwife might be problematic. To be successful, you have to prove that the treating doctor fell below the standard of care owed to your child, causing the injury. And to do this, we use medical experts who are going to come in and they're going to look at the actions or inaction of the midwife. They're going to take a look at things like the readings on the electronic fetal heart monitor. They're going to look at what's in the medical records. They're going to look and want to know what was mom's history. Did she have an uneventful pregnancy? Were there certain issues that she was dealing with? Gestational diabetes, preeclampsia, and some of these other things. These medical experts are going to want to get a complete picture as to what was going on, because like I said earlier, they have to give an opinion as to the standard of care. What was the standard of care? What should that medical professional, what were they supposed to be doing, and whether they fell below that standard of care, they didn't follow the standard of care, and by not following it or deviating from that standard, they caused the injury. These medical experts, they cost, okay? They cost money to be able to do this. And in a lot of these cases, especially how we do it here, we will front the cost on the front end for the cases. So in other words, we're going to be the ones that's going to reach out to the medical experts, through a contingency fee agreement, and we are with the client, and we're going to look and we're going to reach out to these experts, and we're going to see what they say. We're going to get their opinions. We're going to do all of that. And to go further into it with that standard of care issue, remember, this all falls under an area of law called tort law, and it's negligence. And there are four basic elements to negligence: duty, breach, causation, and damages. Number 4, damages. And that is huge when we're talking about just focusing on the midwife. And I've kind of touched on it. We have to pay for a lot of these things on the front end. You're going to have to pay for court costs. You're going to have to pay for these experts to write these reports. You're going to have to pay for medical records. You're going to have to pay for discovery. You're going to have to pay for all of these things. And what we find is that in some instances, when it's just the midwife may not have enough money to cover the recovery. In other words, if they even have an insurance policy, if they have medical malpractice insurance, usually it's not enough to not only cover the cost of the case, but the care that the baby is going to need going into the future. So that's why it could be problematic if you're just trying to go after the midwife or focusing specifically on the midwife, because in these types of cases, especially if we have a brain injury, you've got HIE that you're dealing with, reduced level of blood and oxygen causing an injury to the brain, or a subsequent CP diagnosis, or a child that was dealing with MAS, and because of that they have oxygen issues. All of these things generally will create care for that child that is going to be needed into the future. And the numbers for care, medical care for the remaining part of this child's life, it can get up there really high. I mean, we could be talking in some cases millions of dollars. And so when you're just focusing on the midwife, the problem can be is that there may not be enough coverage. There may not be enough coverage for everything. There may not be enough coverage for the cost that it's going to take to push the case forward. There may not be enough coverage for the medical care that your child is going to need moving into the future. So why did I take the time today to talk with you in this educational video about this concept? Because this was a question that followed the first video that I did, just talking about midwife liability and responsibility in these types of cases, and why in that first video I also brought in the fact that the employer for the midwife is someone also under respondeat superior, the role that they may take in a case like this. In addition to that, if the baby is born at a hospital, and the issues that are present when the hospital also does not do what they're supposed to do, either through a labor and delivery nurse that's an employee of the hospital, or a medical doctor that may be also employed at the hospital. So that's the purpose of today's video, to help you understand this crucial issue in cases like this, because you've got to be able to collect for your baby. That's something that we have to speak with families about, because if it's not going to be enough on the recovery aspect of it, then you could be in a real bad situation at the end of the day. So that's why you need to understand this concept also. If you would like to speak with me further, maybe you're here because your baby has suffered an injury at birth. I briefly talked about HIE. That's a type of brain injury that can occur when there's a lack of oxygen, reduced level of blood and oxygen getting to the baby, which will cause an injury. CP, cerebral palsy, which is something that you can also see in some children subsequently who have suffered that injury, that brain injury at birth. Sometimes they may have a subsequent CP diagnosis. Maybe that's something that you're dealing with, or like I said, MAS, that could be an issue too, meconium aspiration syndrome. If you want to speak with me, there is a telephone number down below. Go ahead and pick up the phone and call me. I talk with families all the time about these issues. I can answer your legal questions in regards to this issue when we're talking about birth trauma and birth injury related matters. One more thing before I leave: I practice law here in the state of Maryland, where I practice law. And if you give me a call and you're not in Maryland, because this video is on the internet, just understand that if this is something that we think that we can assist you with, we have to use what we call co-counsel or local counsel, that is an attorney in your state, to help with the case. All right, that's going to be it for today's quick educational video. Again, I'm Marcus Boston, and I'm one of the childbirth injury and medical malpractice attorneys practicing law here in the state of Maryland at Boston Law Group LLC. And we will see you next time. Take care and enjoy the rest of your day.